speaking with Cenk Uygur, host of The Young Turks and also author of the new book, Justice is Coming, How Progressives Are Going to Take Over the Country.
You thought we were done, huh? New segment. Move it in.
And America is going to love it. I'm most of the way through the book, Cenk, and you talk about...
There's no escape.
...about so many different things that are relevant to the 2024 election, to what's happening.
What's up, Deepak? Deepak, your pearly blues are looking terrifyingly piercing. Did he just put eye drops in before that? Look at his eyes. They're like resin-coated glass beads. You know, they're like so shiny. I feel Cenk is getting eye-mogged right now. Look at him. Cenk can barely even look out of those peepers, and meanwhile, Deepak just beaming. Yeah, Shape of Water, motherfucker.
Happened in the past, maybe just to pick something interesting that relates to what you discuss in the book. You seem, I think, increasingly worried that Joe Biden's reelection is going to go haywire, that he's going to lose, that he can't beat Trump if that's who the nominee is. The context, although you're not directly addressing this necessarily in the book, the context you talk about in the book relates to it. Am I accurately understanding your view on the Biden reelection?
100%, yeah. Look, nothing is, in terms of probabilities of winning, nothing is 0 or 100%. Everything's on a spectrum somewhere, right?
Yep.
So, and unfortunately,
I'm
a lot
on the
of people
spectrum.
think in a binary way. Well, he won last time. That means he's going to win this time. No, it doesn't work that way. It's a percentage chance. And with Joe Biden, any rational person realizes that the percentage chance of him beating Trump is much lower than if we had a strong Democratic candidate. Now, why is he, quote unquote, not strong? Well, look at the polling. It's not my opinion. And this isn't progressive versus moderate. That has nothing to do with any of this. I don't have a progressive alternative. There's no Trojan horse that we're going to sneak in and voila, Nina Turner's president. No. Okay. I mean, I would love that, but no.
I've talked about this before, but I really genuinely do not think that the polling that we've seen is very useful or representative. I just don't think we should care about the polling. Obviously, I would prefer it if we had a better candidate than Biden, but that's like always going to be the case, right? Like, obviously, I would always prefer a better candidate than any candidate we have, because then it would always be a better candidate. Biden's age does hurt him, but I don't know. I mean, it could be a lot worse. He could be Hillary.
Okay. No, I'll take Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania. I'll take Governor Beshear from Kentucky just to increase our percentage chances. So why are they so low, David? They're low because 72% of the country says that they don't even think he's going to make it through a second term. I mean, that's a disastrous poll. And so we could try to wish that away, but we can't. His approval rating in half the recent polls are in the 30s. If you're in the 40s as an incumbent, you're very likely to lose. If you're in the 30s, I've literally never seen it happen. So, I mean, and remember, when he won the Electoral College by a razor-thin margin, he won the popular vote by 4.5 points. So he has to be up at a bare minimum 4.5, but then you're playing dice with democracy. So realistically, he has to be up 5 points. And right now he's losing. Come on, guys, think about it. He's losing to the moron Donald Trump right now. It's like
again, like, this is a rookie mistake. Using polling more than a year out from the actual election as an actual indicator of popularity to suggest like, oh, well, he's 10 points down from his victory margin back in 2020. So that means, like, you know, I don't agree with that. I guess it's possible, you know, but I don't agree with it.
Inconceivable. It cannot, David, it cannot be the most important election of our lifetimes. And we are choosing to go into it with a very hobbled candidate because we'd like to be polite to him because he'd like a better legacy as a two-term president.
So let me present a couple different perspectives, okay, and see what you think. One is, it's September, you know, end of September, early October 2023, and Joe Biden is currently the president of the United States. So the question I'm asking is, his replacement with who would actually get the Democratic candidate in a better position? I don't think that if he were to be replaced at this point, because of the negative connotations of that it actually would increase the chances that the Democratic nominee becomes president. Do you agree with that? Or you think his replacement at this stage of the game ups the odds that the Democratic candidate wins?
His replacement would instantly give the Democrats a 5 to 10 point bump. Instantly.
Really? With who, though?
Okay, easy.
I think that's completely ridiculous. That's so dumb. Insane perspective. Insane. As an incumbent? Not just like on its own, it would be insane. But as an incumbent candidate, are you kidding me? Absolutely psychotic.
Easy. I named two right there. I'll name them again. I could name you probably about 400 Democrats in the country who would do better than Joe Biden.
Just
I mean, look at that way of thinking. The only Democrat who could win is Joe Biden. Why? Is the rest of the Democratic Party totally pathetic?
No. My argument is less about that. And by the way, I don't know that I'm any more of a Biden fan than you are. I'm just trying to think about this as strategically as possible. The act of saying at this point that a president who has announced they are running for re-election has an okay economic record and has had some tangible advancements for labor, et cetera, which we can talk about, saying we're actually going to pull them out. We're either going to run a primary or we're just going to anoint someone. It's hard for me to imagine it helps.
No, it's totally, Look, we have a massive disagreement there. So let me explain why. Okay?
Yeah, please.
But this case is almost never made, so probably nobody's even heard this case before.
Okay.
So first of all, heated primaries are a wonderful thing.
Here's the proper take. The Dem mainstream has failed to groom a charismatic replacement. That I agree with. But it takes a lot of time and money and planning and hard work to bring a candidate up to a level where they have a shot at the presidency. Even if you've somebody who, like, if they got the same amount of exposure as Biden, they would be more popular. Sure, that's fine. The question is, how do you get somebody more exposure than an incumbent president? The answer is you basically can't. It's not really doable. You know, maybe if you had like 4 years out, you could have been trying. But under these circumstances, just no.
The examples against heated primaries go back decade after decade. Oh, in 1972 and 1837.
Also, you have to be careful about primaries against an incumbent president because if Biden won the presidency in 2020 and there was a primary in like 2023 and he actually lost the primary, it would cause a lot of really bitter factional infighting. People who sided with Biden over the person who ends up winning in the primary would feel pretty betrayed by that, and they would feel like the differences between the candidates might be severe enough that it sort of agitates their desire to vote. It's difficult. It's difficult, you know? It's not impossible, but it's difficult. It's something that would have to happen with Biden's consent. I have a feeling that if they did have a really, really, really good, prominent candidate who could run in 2024, Biden might have said, I don't know, Jack, I'm too old for this, you know, and endorsed somebody else. Maybe. But again, that's a lot of work. That's tough. That's very tough.
No, guys. In 2020, the Democrats had a heated primary. They won. In 2016, the Republicans had a really heated, the most heated primary in American history, and they won. Why? Because the extra coverage, media coverage you get from a heated primary helps your side make your case to the American people. The Democrats are not making their case at all. Whereas if we had Governor Beshear from Kentucky and
But he's an incumbent, so he made his case with his first term. Like he didn't need a primary to make his case. He did the primary back in 2020, and he's had a term as the president. That's it. His beliefs and policy are known.
Governor Shapiro from Pennsylvania against Joe Biden, they'd all be talking about how great the Democratic case is and how they would be better at executing that Democratic case. I don't believe in anointing anyone. It's absurd. I don't believe that the president is king and we must abide by his rule.
Yeah.
I don't believe in line of succession and hence the crown princess Kamala Harris should be anointed next. No, I believe in something very simple. Democracy. It works. Give me a primary today and I will give you a much stronger Democratic Party.
Couple thoughts on that. And this is interesting. And by the way, I would love a Democratic primary and make Joe Biden win it again. Like, I get why the Democratic Party's not doing it. I understand their thing is we've got someone in the Oval Office. Our best shot is just go with that. I would love a primary.
I don't, honestly, David, I don't think that's why they're doing it.
Well, they're a corporation.
David, hold on. Everyone, you know, and I know, everyone in our lifetimes has said the rule, an incumbent under 50 points is very likely to lose. So they keep talking about incumbent advantage, and that's actually not true.
No. You can't run off these polling numbers. Under 50 points on what poll? What are you talking about? From over a year out? How would you even know? By the time the polling is more relevant, the time for a primary has already passed.
The incumbent advantage exists in Montana, where name recognition is the name of the game. But at the presidential level, everybody's going to know the Democratic candidate in the general election. Literally everyone is. Name recognition is not an issue. Incumbency actually weighs you down as president. It's actually a negative thing. They get to attack you on all the different issues. So the Democrats don't want Biden just because they believe in the power of incumbency, and maybe some of them do it genuinely. But the real reason is they believe in the power of authoritarian rule.
Mm.
If you ask the DNC, they are never going to go with an outsider. They are never going to go with someone who isn't already the incumbent because they believe in the current power infrastructure.
Agreed.
But
That's not wrong, but that's the case for both political parties. That's just a political party thing. Yeah, they're gonna put their money behind the proven candidate. Like they're not just gonna entertain like anyone who gets thrown in front of there. Like obviously they're gonna go with people who seem like they have a decent amount of institutional support.
us as Democratic voters need to rebel and say, I didn't sign up for authoritarian rule. That's the other side.
That's not authoritarian rule, by the way. That's not. The idea that the DNC playing favorites is the same as like a rejection of democratic values is unironically reactionary rhetoric. You are downplaying the threat Republicans pose to democracy so much by equating these two things. Like, oh yeah, Republicans have like an on-the-books plan to destroy the country if they win the presidency again. But on the other hand, you know, the Democrats, they favor the incumbent candidate. Oh, really? Oh, well, it's shocking that they would do that.
I signed up for democracy and fighting for our values.
So 2 thoughts on this hypothetical primary that we both agree won't happen but would like to see. One is...
By the way, I don't agree to that. I'm trying to force that
okay.
primary in every
All right,
single way.
fair.
And tyt.com/dropout because the best way to get here is...
By the way, this is why, like, you don't need to respect Cenk, like, on any level, okay? So his way of framing this is literally, like, let's do an e-poll with recent signers that of only the past 6 signers goes back 4 hours to convince the current president to drop out from the next race. What the even if this was somehow like possible or effectual or could do anything, the consequence of this would just guarantee a Republican win. You can say, oh, I wish the Democrats had done more to prepare another candidate, but if Biden just dropped out now, they haven't, so you would just guarantee a loss. Like, it's so stupid. This is incredibly stupid.
That Joe Biden stops being an egomaniac and worrying
okay, fair.
about
So you think it might happen?
Egomaniac? Joe Biden? Of all the people to call an egomaniac, him? He's just a kindly old grandpa who is the strongest incumbent candidate, and incumbency is a huge benefit to your likelihood of winning, so he just... Okay, yeah, ridiculous. Force the vote, but even more retarded. Yeah, no, seriously, yeah, it's so bad.
I don't think it will happen. Fine, that's a disagreement. But here's 2 thoughts based on what you said.
Deepak is like, okay, that's really dumb, but let's like get to the substance.
1, the Republican primary right now is a version of what you described, meaning they seem to sort of agree on the package, much like you're saying Democratic voters agree on the platform and why it's better than what Republicans are offering. Many of those people in the Republican primary are less crazy than Trump and probably would be more likely to actually do the things that they want to do. Trump's blowing them out of the water without even going to the debates. So that's one thing. It's not obvious to me that when voters are presented with other people who are younger and less crazy with the same ideas, on the Republican side, they're doing something very different. Republican voters are different, and you can make that case in a second. Second observation, we have some polling of Williamson, Kennedy, and Biden. Now, my opinion is Kennedy and Williamson are not people like the ones you described. But I actually think if there were a primary right now and Biden is in it, I think Biden wins the primary.
No.
No?
No, yeah. The only way that he wins the primary is mainstream media brainwashes everyone.
Holy shit, actually just 5 IQ. What, are you kidding me? In an actual primary vote, in spite of every single piece of polling data indicating otherwise, in spite of the fact that Kennedy is literally threatening to run as an independent and Marianne Williamson pulls like 3% of the vote, are you seriously telling me you think he would lose that primary? Actually, like lead paint. A genuine, like lead paint. No, Benjamin, you're just wrong. This isn't media media bias. Oh God, you're going to give me an aneurysm. Media bias. It's, in this case, preferring Biden as a primary candidate over Marion and Kennedy is not media bias. It's reality. For one, like, you know, if the media wasn't brainwashing people, the media does what it does. Get over it. Like, in a magical world that's different, where media has no bias, in a system that has never existed anywhere ever at any time. Actually, I think my version of events would play out. It's never happened. It will never happen. I don't know why you should even mention. Like, Bernie would have won if only things had been different. Wow, thank you for that. That's one. For two, even in a completely like neutral media environment, what like you realize the average voter is going to like see one clip of Kennedy and realize that he's like a raspy ghoul who can't stop talking about Jews and COVID, and instantly they're going to like put their primary vote down for Biden, right? Marianne at least is a real human being. Kennedy currently is threatening to run independent in a fashion that would probably pull more votes than Republicans. Why would you? Oh my God. Do you suspect grifterness on Cenk's part, or do you think he genuinely believes in everything he says? I'm not sure. I think that he's taking money. I think there's reliable information that I've heard. I feel that they're having some money issues, and they feel like relevance issues, and they're taking money to be like the dark horse. Maybe he believes it too. Reality is complicated. Sometimes it's both. The more I do this, the more I realize that basically everyone's taking a paycheck, but like me and a few other people. It's insane, like genuinely. But like, can you think of like a reasonable, logical explanation for this behavior from somebody who's been doing politics for 20 years? This guy helped found the Justice Dems, and now he's like, yeah, I think that Biden would actually lose in a straightforward primary race to Marianne Williamson and Robert F. Kennedy. Really? You really genuinely think that, Cenk? Is that actually true? I don't know. You have me believing in grifting. You have me believing in profound predation. You have me believing in lead paint. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what to think. The money answer is the obvious one. It's the most likely one. It's the most effective one, too. Isn't it a coincidence that profound, sudden, irreversible predation just happens to throw people to the right every time? Like, you don't have people hard thrown over to the left. It's always the other way around. I think there's a monetary interest there, and there's a lot more money on the right. But I don't know. Maybe that's not true. Maybe it's just profound retardation. I don't know. I can't ever know. I will never know.
Of the Democratic voters into compliance.
Okay.
But I don't think they're going to. And so that's a giant difference between 2016, 2020, and 2024. Why? Because in 2016 and 2020, MSNBC and CNN hit progressives and Bernie Sanders harder than Fox News did. Constantly battering, because they're in favor of corporate rule and establishment Democrats. But in this case, it's not really. Look, I wish it was Marianne versus Biden, and I'm going to vote for Marianne if those are the choices. And I'm going to do that easily. I think she's not only the better candidate in terms of policy, I think she has a better chance of winning. I think everyone has a better chance of winning than Biden. But okay, put that aside. What is much more likely is
just profoundly stupid on every level.
A Governor Shapiro or a Governor Beshear or a Governor Whitmer against Biden. Okay, well, in that case, the mainstream media actually probably flips to being either neutral or a little against Biden, because then they don't have to worry about a progressive, which they hate way more than they would hate Trump, right? So since you don't have to worry about that, and they all know Biden's going to lose. I mean, you could see the sweat on Joe Scarborough's forehead every morning. And James Carville came out yesterday with Bill Maher and said, what, are we crazy? Finally, David Ignatius at the Washington Post, finally people are catching up to what I'm saying, which is...
Well, yeah. Bill Maher, clearly the highest level of political rigor on display here. Clear that the intellectuals have woken up to my perspective on this. Bill Maher, well known to be a consistent advocate for left issues.
Guys, this isn't your normal battle where you dig into your trenches. Do you really think democracy's on the line? Because my hair's on fire.
Right.
Trump is promising not only imprisonment, but death for his political opponents.
Yep.
And people aren't getting it. They keep projecting normalness onto Trump when he is not normal. Will he actually do those things? Yes. He will definitely imprison his political opponents. He has said it. Bannon has said it. Roger Stone has said it. They've said it 100 times. They're going to imprison people for no goddamn reason. His former defense secretary just yesterday said, yes, he considered arresting and imprisoning General McRaven and General McChrystal in the last term. And back then there was brakes in the car. So democracy is actually on the line. To go in with a wounded antelope is madness, total madness. So I think even the Morning Joe guys know. For that.
Guys, Trump poses an unimaginable threat to democracy. We have but one response. We have to primary. We have to run in the general RFK Jr. It's the only way forward.
It's Newsom and Whitmer, right? For me, it's Shapiro and Beshear because I think they're more likely to win. They won in swing states, they won in red states.
They won't. You need more than just a year to challenge an incumbent president. You need a long time to set the stage for this. Joe Biden has been in politics since in dinosaur years. He's been here for millennia. He was one of the senators who presided over military action against the Confederacy, or maybe for the Confederacy, honestly, with the friends he had early on. Yeah, like this is This is so stupid. I wasn't activated in 2016. Did Bernie come out of nowhere? Or first of all, Bernie had been involved heavily in politics for a long time, but more importantly, he wasn't up against an incumbent. Obama had run his 2 terms. People felt relatively comfortable, and they threw up Hillary, a famously unpopular candidate, and Bernie Sanders took a crack at it, and he nearly won against her. I'm not against that, but keep in mind, Bernie Sanders didn't just show up a year before the election. Like, he had been laying the groundwork for his involvement for a while beforehand, and he made a bunch of really smart decisions leading up to that point. And yeah, he came pretty close, but again, that was up against non-incumbent Hillary. Incumbent Biden, though?
And they're more personal, slightly better policies. But give me anyone but Biden. I don't want to purposely lose this election. I don't want to go quietly into that good night.
So to not make the entire interview just about this, I think this is a good segue into what you argue in the book is actually the state of the country when it comes to the political spectrum, which is that you argue that this is fundamentally a progressive country. This is an argument I've also been making. When you really do issue-oriented polling and the wording is fair, and particularly if you track the change over the last 30, 40, 50 years on a lot of these issues, abortion and many others, that it really is fundamentally at least as progressive a country on.
Yeah, exactly. Give me any guy other than the one guy who beat Trump last election. True.
Average close to some of the Northern European countries. However, you talk about in the book influence of money. We know that the way that politics is financed is a problem. We know that the Electoral College is a problem. All these different things sort of get in the way. What do you believe is the most direct path to getting all of the obstacles out of the way, not so that we can skew anything, but just so that the actual current opinions of voters will be reflected in who's representing us in Washington, D.C.?
I don't think AOC can run in 2024. But if she did run right now, I think she would have an okay chance against Trump. Not as good as Biden, but an okay chance. She polarizes independents a lot harder, but she would also probably mobilize a lot of young voters. And that might be enough. Like, she can't run. But if she could, the fact that she could pull so many young voters might be a winner. Is 2028 AOC actually realistic? I mean, it could be, but I'd rather she spent more time in politics, you know?
The obstacles we have to get out of the way.
Yeah, so there's really two. There's a bunch of things that I explained in chapter 6 as to why we're going to win and how we can win, right?
Yep.
But there's a couple of pillars of that victory. So one is the route that Bernie's been taking, which is go for leadership at the Democratic level and change the culture of the Democratic Party, have it represent the voters again, as opposed to corporate interest. And in chapter 4, I explain how we lost the Democratic Party to corporate interests and to donors, right? So that's a perfectly good way, and we're going to win with that because not only do you see the polling shows that 2/3 of the country is progressive on nearly every issue, and so you just need a leader to put a spotlight on it, right? But on top of that, you also have the young voters, and the young voters are very progressive, and they're coming in a tsunami in our direction. So once we have a leader, it will galvanize all of those forces. But you cannot just wait for, a guy on a white, horse to ride in and save the day. So the real key in the long run is to take money out of politics. The only way you can do that is a constitutional amendment to go above the Supreme Court. And do you need to build a?
Well, then we're not getting it. Okay, sure, okay, but then we're not getting it. We're not getting a new amendment to the Constitution ratified anytime soon.
Bipartisan coalition to pass an amendment? Of course you do. But the thing is, the one redeeming quality Republican voters have is that they also hate corruption. And so you know.
Oh, dude, seriously? You really think that there's room with like the extremely pro-corporate Dems and the double super ultra extremely pro-corporate Republicans and Republicans, the guys who voted in Trump, the most openly corrupt human in all existence, like the most obviously, flagrantly, transparently corrupt human to have ever lived, they vote this guy in, and you're telling me that they're going to get the 3/4 states necessary
I know with Trump they don't mind it, okay, but other than that,
no, that's an important fact.
They actually did want to drain the swamp, and they actually do hate corporate Republicans like Mitch McConnell, and that's a really positive.
No, they don't like Mitch McConnell, not because he's pro-corporate, but because he's not openly fascist. They don't like Mitch McConnell because Trump doesn't like Mitch McConnell. Trump is also pro-corporate. They're all pro-corporate. The opposition to Mitch McConnell is because he's not an open fascist. That's it.
Positive development. And we need to take those guys and our guys and say, stop listening to corporate Democrats and corporate Republicans. Work together to get an amendment to end private financing of elections, because as long as they get their money from private interests, politicians will always serve private interests. And of course, the last roadblock, David, is...
I'm sure Republicans will go along with this, despite the fact that they receive a much higher disproportionate amount of their funding from corporate donors. I'm sure Republicans, who are openly describing how they'll destroy this country and its democracy, would happily promote a constitutional amendment that would cripple their own funding. Yeah, for sure. I bet they will happily do that. Yeah, they're openly anti-democracy and pro-corporate and pro-corruption, but also they're willing to undercut themselves deliberately for what? The sake of principle? You're conflating Republican voters and officials. Republican voters do what they're told. Voters do what they're told. If the officials, guys, they said that anti-climate change legislation was woke, and therefore they shouldn't vote in it. Like, it doesn't matter. What people actually want doesn't matter. There are demagogues, politicians, pundits, and the people who are victims of their misinformation, and that's it.
Mainstream media, corporate media overall, which is right-wing media and mainstream media combined. And those guys are the biggest benefactor of money in politics. They get tens of billions of dollars every election cycle. And since they get almost all the money from corruption, the media does an excellent job of convincing you that there is no corruption.
Then why would they change that now and enable the passing of a new amendment?
No, when someone gives millions of dollars to a politician, they're just talking to them. Oh my God, they happen to agree. That's why they always vote with the way the donors want. It's just a coincidence. The New York Times tells you in absurd, ridiculous fashion. CNN tells you it's a mass hypnosis.
I get messages from progressives who would agree with basically everything you just said and who write to me worried. And they say, you know, David, we have the Bernie Sanders example from 2020. Paula Jean Swearingen, Randy Bryce, Nina Turner, who I believe now works for you at TYT. I'm as progressive.
That's a fucking red flag. Do you think that might have anything to do with how things have panned out?
As the rest of them, but there's a bunch of these races at all sorts of different levels where the person that genuinely seems to be the progressive loses. Is it because maybe the country isn't as progressive as I thought? Is it because of media coverage? Is it because of money in politics? What's the explanation that ties it all together?
Yeah. So look, there's both specific cases and the general explanation. In terms of the specific cases, every case that you mentioned, those three examples, for example, are very different. Paula Jean Swearingen, you know, I had a lot of love for her in the beginning, and God bless her heart, but she did not run winning campaigns. And in West Virginia, the way that she ran it and the media coverage, it was not realistic, right? So on the other,
Nina isn't bad. Yeah, she is. Look, it's not a matter of what she believes in. It's that she's gone down a pretty bad road when it comes to political effectiveness. From making enemies within the DNC, which have made it harder for her to win, to advocating a kind of like we need organization and activism outside the DNC in like an electoral sense. A lot of the stuff that she's done has pushed her towards ineffectual behavior. And she did a lot of Bernie or bust stuff too, you know. Not good.
On the other hand, Nina Turner did not lose to the Republicans. She lost in a primary, and she had a 35-point lead. Why did she lose? Because Democratic lobbyists and PACs put in over $4 million in the last 2 weeks. They bought nearly every ad in Cleveland. And so...
Yeah, that's how it works. She didn't do herself any favors by making so many enemies beforehand. You know, you can be a progressive and still get a decent amount of, like, DNC support if you know how to play your cards right. Yeah, she had a lot of money, too. Hold on. It's not just a matter of, like, special election Ohio's 11th congressional district. Just bad lessons here. Turner was not re-endorsed by prominent members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus who endorsed her last year. Again, activists don't make good politicians. Yeah, that's often the case. Being a good activist and being a good politician are two very different things. Incredibly important to keep that in mind.
That money, the corrupt, dark money, is what beat her in the primary. So if you go with that line of logic, what are we going to do? We're going to give up as Democratic voters and say this party no longer represents us. It represents corporate interests, but we have to go with the corporate candidates because they're the ones with the most bribes. That's just a disgusting place to be, right? So I don't want that, but we can beat all of that. We can get past all of that. So the general way to win is, and this is why the last part of Chapter 6 is so important, not just the PACs, but the media. And this is why TYT is important, and David Pakman is important, and all these shows are important. Because, guys, if we just live under mainstream media, they're going to hammer the progressive candidate every single time. I mean, look at what they said about Bernie, that there was going to be executions in Central Park and his followers were Nazi brown shirts, right? And that wasn't on Fox News, that was on MSNBC, right?
Yeah, that was one guy who said that, and he ended up like he was like the crazy grandpa they had around. They ended up ousting him afterwards. Like, it was really bad, but I don't like the implication. I don't like the implication that that was like descriptive of the way the mainstream media treated Bernie. Like, again, there was some unfair shit done to Bernie, but I just don't like it when people pretend that like all of left media got a marching order from on high to just shit talk Bernie 24/7, and it was just like this completely unambiguous denunciation from them broadly. It's really irresponsible to say that.
But because of the new wave of media, people are not listening to those guys anymore. So the under 45-year-olds are vote for progressives. They even in states that Bernie lost, I show in the book, he wins under 45-year-olds, depending on the age bracket, by 20 points, 40 points, 60 points, right? And so we cannot snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. Our side, according to the age demographics, is about to win in a massive way. We just have to get out of our own way and make sure we run in primaries. Do not let primaries go without running. The fact that no progressive ran against Biden is a crime. They just gave away all of that media coverage, all the ability to make the progressive case, even if you don't win.
Cenk, last thing I want to ask you about the Trump criminal trials, Trump skipping the Republican debates, et cetera. This is very like tactical and practical to what's going on right now.
Yeah, shit. Sorry, I was rereading this, but like even after the monetary influence from the Democratic Majority for Israel PAC, these ghouls, and all of the shit they threw in here, NPR reported Turner's team fundraising was approximately $5.7 million, while Brown, her primary opponent, was $2.6 million. Nina Turner still had a ton of money to work with. Exit poll shows Brown won some of the areas with higher proportion of black and Jewish voters, while Turner won some with more white voters, a minority in the district. Isn't that kind of weird that Nina Turner, a black woman and a socialist, would do better in the white areas, but worse in the black and Jewish areas? Brown fared better in the wealthier areas, where Turner was better in the low-income areas, so that makes more sense, I guess. Brown won more in the suburbs, Turner won more in Cleveland. A press release from the Brown campaign says their internal polling also showed Turner's loss could be attributed in part to her comparison of voting for then-candidate Joe Biden to, quote, eating half a bowl of shit. I wonder if there are consequences in a Democratic primary to speaking like that. Did not adequately respond to the inevitable attacks on Turner's history of conflict with key figures in the Democratic Party. This is why there's a huge difference between activists and politicians. She compared to voting for Trump as eating a full bowl of shit. You know, it really shouldn't surprise you if more like moderate or centrist Dem blocks of money start favoring your opponent when you refer to the Democratic candidate you've put forward as half of a bowl of shit. Like, that's not... Do you think Bernie's team did a bad job hiring all those grifters or deadweights like BJG or Turner? Maybe.
I interviewed Rachel Bidikofer. She's not that impressed with the Republican polling. She says, you know, a lot of voters don't start paying attention until way later. It's not that obvious that Trump is necessarily going to win.
Agreed.
Every day that passes that Trump's winning by 45, and DeSantis is falling, and Vivek's up to 8 and then down to 4, and there's just nothing happening. Prices for ads in the second Fox debate are 50% lower than they were for the first because no one's watching, no one's paying for this stuff. Is there anything that can get in this guy's way to prevent him from being the nominee?
Yeah, as always, the only thing that can get in Donald Trump's way is Donald Trump. So can he do something even more monstrous? I mean, look, Cassidy Hutchinson says that when they were chanting "Hang Mike Pence," Donald Trump was cheering them on and saying he didn't mind if his own vice president was going to be murdered by his fans. Now, look, people just glaze past that because we're so used to Donald Trump being a monster and we're desensitized to it. If there was a credible story from someone inside his own White House that said that Barack Obama didn't mind if Joe Biden was murdered,
right,
it would have literally been, very literally, the story of the century.
Yeah.
Right. So Trump says it. Everyone's like, oh, yeah, of course. He's in favor of murdering people left and right. He just said he wants to murder the Joint Chiefs of Staff. This is not normal. OK, so
I agree.
But that doesn't affect MAGA because he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and get away with it.
Yep.
But if they see Pat Cipollone and Mark Meadows testify, whether it's in Atlanta or in the federal case, on the stand and say, yes, I was in the room, I'm absolutely positive. He said he did not mind the vice president being murdered. He thought his own vice president deserved to be murdered, if they confirm what Cassidy Hutchinson said, does that wake them up out of their hypnosis? Maybe enough of them, maybe.
I think they assume it's a lie. I think they assume the witnesses are lying if that happens.
I'm sure, but I'm giving you the
Yeah.
only things that could possibly be
Yeah.
right? In the documents case, you find out why did he take remember the one in Bedminster, New Jersey, plans to invade Iran? Why did he take that one? Why was it at the top of his desk? Well, who's Iran's number one enemy? Saudi Arabia. Who just gave his son-in-law $2 billion? Who just bought the PGA so they could turn all the golf tournaments into Trump golf properties and have them played there so that Trump could make millions of dollars? The Saudis did. Now, do I know that he sold that to the Saudis? No, I don't know that at all. I don't have any evidence to that effect. But it's a hypothetical of if Jack Smith has that evidence and he lays that out in court, would that change MAGA's mind? And maybe some percentage will never change. If he gave it to ISIS and said, here's how you can murder as many Americans as you can, even then they wouldn't change. Yeah. I know that, right?
Okay, I think at this point we're just talking about stuff that we agree on. Okay, nice meme. If anything else, we got to talk about electoralism, so that's good. God damn. Why does it feel like there are so few comments for this number of views? They're not botted. Deepak's growth has been pretty authentic, but like, where's the big... Maybe there's just not that much channel engagement, like there's not a bunch of in-jokes and memes that people throw in there. I'm not really sure. Whatever the case may be. You know, Cenk made a promise to Hassan that he was not going to overly engage with detractors online, and I am testing him, okay? I'm giving him material to get upset about. I really don't think Cenk is grifting. I don't know. Like, I can't know is the thing. I am reminded like time and time again, I am reminded, and it frustrates me that people and the world broadly don't have to make sense, right? Sometimes people can just spend 20 years building good progressive advocacy and then just randomly be a dipshit. And I just have to deal with that. And it's very frustrating for me because I would like to assign some kind of meaning and for the most part, I think meaning can be assigned to this stuff. It's really obvious who gets paid by Russia or subsidiaries. You know, it's, you can see a lot of this stuff, but sometimes it's like, oh, well, I have no idea. I don't know. It's very frustrating. Do you agree with Trump on this? What is it about steak doneness? Trump slurring, saying he would rather face electrocution than be eaten by a shark. Yeah. I don't want to be eaten by a shark. Sounds horrible. Fair. What's Biden's response to this issue? Maybe I agree with Trump on something. Have you ever been electrocuted, though? I got one of those, like, electro massage things where there's, like, the two nodes and you put it, like, on your upper back or whatever. And I thought it felt kind of weird. I didn't really like it. I saw some people felt really positively about it, that it, like, really helped loosen their muscles, but it wasn't every person kind of thing. So I tried it. And it just felt kind of weird. I guess it didn't feel bad, you know. Electrocution equals death. Electric shock equals not death. Well, I didn't die, so I guess it'd be an electric shock then. That's the closest you've come to electrocution. How often do you guys get zapped? I don't think zapping is like... I don't think... Generally, I don't think you get zapped. Like, I don't think that's like a common thing. Except for the people into it as a kink, I guess. But, you know... Yeah, I have, Espero. Wait, you didn't like to touch electric fences as a kid? I grew up in LA, okay? Nobody's raising cattle in on Wilshire Boulevard.